Hare Krishna, my dear devotees, welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, right here in the live studios in Hive, Kent, Southeast England, just near the English Channel. We're here with Rasika Shirmani, Das Vanachari, and Abhaya Das Brahmachari, living a simple life in this little ashram, spiritual life, and trying to share the nectar of Srila Prabhupada's sound vibration with the world, or as many as will listen, who want to listen. We hope that you are all well and safe and happy in all respects. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Mahima Stotram from Sri Krishna Lila Stava by Srila Sanatana Goswami describes why we're so happy here. It goes like this. Sarva Shastra Dipi Yusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Śrīmad-Bhāgavata Prabho Kalidvandoditaditya Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life, heir of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate. Excuse me. Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadana Man Nistadaga Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu, sadhadayin, atini chochakakara, hanamun chagadachin mam, premna rit kantayokspura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we've reached the 8th chapter of the first canto of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, prayers by Queen Kuntī and Parīkṣit saved. So Queen Kuntī has just finished her prayers, and we're starting with text 44. Sutta Goswami said, the Lord, thus hearing the prayers of Kunti Devi, composed in choice words for his glorification, mildly smiled. That smile was as enchanting as his mystic power. Purport. Anything that is enchanting in the world is said to be a representation of the Lord. The conditioned souls who are engaged in trying to lord it over the material world are also enchanted by his mystic powers. But his devotees are enchanted in a different way by the glories of the Lord, and his merciful blessings are upon them. His energy is displayed in different ways, as electrical energy works in manifold capacities. Srimati Kuntī Devi has prayed to the Lord just to enunciate a fragment of his glories. All his devotees worship him in that way, by chosen words, and therefore the Lord is known as Uttama Shloka. No amount of chosen words is sufficient to enumerate the Lord's glories, and yet he is satisfied by such prayers, as the Father is satisfied even by the broken linguistic attempts of the growing child. The word Maya is used both in the sense of delusion and mercy. Herein the word Maya is used in the sense of the Lord's mercy upon Kuntī Devi. Text 45. Thus, accepting the prayers of Srimati Kuntī Devi, the Lord subsequently informed other ladies of his departure by entering the palace of Hastinapur. But upon preparing to leave, he was stopped by King Yudhishthira, who implored him lovingly. Purport. No one could make Lord Krishna stay at Hastinapur when he decided to start for Dwarka, but the simple request of King Yudhishthira that the Lord remain there for a few days more was immediately effective. This signifies that the power of King Yudhishthira was loving affection, which the Lord could not deny. The Almighty Lord is thus conquered only by loving service and nothing else. He is fully independent in all his dealings, but he voluntarily accepts obligations by the loving affection of his pure devotees. Text 46. King Yudhishthira, who was much aggrieved, could not be convinced, despite instructions by Vyasa and other great sages, and by Lord Krishna himself, the performer of superhuman feats, and despite all historical evidence. Purport. The pious King Yudhishthira was mortified because of the mass massacre of human beings in the battle of Kurukshetra, especially on his account. Duryodhana had been there on the throne, and he was doing well in his administration, and in one sense there was no need of fighting. But on the principle of justice, Yudhishthira was to replace him. The whole conspiracy of politics centered around this point, and all the kings and residents of the whole world became involved in this fight between the rival cousins. Lord Krishna was also there on the side of King Yudhishthira. It is said in the Mahabharata, Adi Parva 225, that 640 million men were killed in the 18 days of the Battle of Kurukshetra, and that millions were missing. Practically, this was the greatest battle in the world within 5,000 years. This mass killing, simply to enthrone Maharaj Yudhishthira, was too mortifying. So he tried to be convinced with evidences from histories by great sages like Vyasa and the Lord himself that the fight was just because the cause was just. But Maharaj Yudhishthira would not be satisfied, even though he was instructed by the greatest personalities of the time. Krishna is designated herein as the performer of superhuman actions. But in this particular instance, neither he nor Vyasa could convince King Yudhishthira. Does it mean that he had failed to be a superhuman actor? No, certainly not. The interpretation is that the Lord is Ishvara, or the Supersoul, in the hearts of both King Yudhishthir and Vyas, performed still more superhuman action because the Lord desired it. As Supersoul of King Yudhishthir, he did not allow the king to be convinced by the words of Vyas and others, including himself, because he desired that the king hear instructions from the dying Bhismatev, who was another great devotee of the Lord. The Lord wanted that at the last stage of his material existence, the great warrior Bhismatev see him personally and see his beloved grandchildren, King Yudhishthir, and so on, now situated on the throne, and thus pass away very peacefully. Bhismadev was not at all satisfied to fight against the Pandavas, who were his beloved fatherless grandchildren. But the Kshatriyas are also very stern people, and therefore he was obliged to take the side of Duryodhana, because he was maintained at the expense of Duryodhana. Besides this, the Lord also desired that King Yudhishthir be pacified by the words of Bhismadev, so that the world could see that Bhismadev excelled all in knowledge, including the Lord himself. Text 47. King Yudhishthir, son of Dharma, overwhelmed by the death of his friends, was aggrieved just like a common materialistic man. O sages, thus deluded by affection, he began to speak. Purport. King Yudhishthir, although he was not expected to become aggrieved like a common man, became deluded by worldly affection by the will of the Lord, just as Arjuna was apparently deluded. The man who sees knows well that the living entity is neither the body nor the mind, but is transcendental to the material conception of life. The common man thinks of violence and non-violence in terms of the body, but that is a kind of delusion. Everyone is duty-bound according to one's occupational duties. A Kshatriya is bound to fight for the right cause, regardless of the opposite party. In such discharge of duty, one should not be disturbed by annihilation of the material body, which is only an external dress of the living soul. All this was perfectly known to Maharaj Yudhishthir, but by the will of the Lord, he became just like a common man, because there was another great idea behind this delusion. The king would be instructed by Bhishma, as Arjuna was instructed by the Lord himself. Text 48. King Yudhishthir said, "O my lot, I am the most sinful man. Just see my heart, which is full of ignorance. This body, which is ultimately meant for others, has killed many, many phalanxes of men." Purport. A solid phalanx of 21,870 chariots, 21,870 elephants, 109,350 infantry, and 65,610 cavalry is called an Akshohini. And many Akshohinis were killed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Maharaj Yudhishthir, as the most pious king of the world, takes for himself the responsibility for killing such a large number of living beings, because the battle was fought to reinstate him on the throne. This body is, after all, meant for others. While there is life in the body, it is meant for the service of others. and when it is dead, it is meant to be eaten by dogs and jackals or maggots. He is sorry because for such a temporary body, such a huge massacre was committed. Text 49. I have killed many boys, brahmanas, well-wishers, friends, parents, preceptors, and brothers. I will not be relieved from the hell that awaits me for all these sins, though I lived there for millions of years. Purport. Whenever there is a war, there is certainly a massacre of many innocent living beings, such as boys, brahmanas, and women, whose killing is considered to be the greatest of sins. They are all innocent creatures, and in all circumstances, killing of them is forbidden in the scriptures. Maharaj Yudhishthira was aware of these mass killings. Similarly, there were friends, parents, and preceptors also on both sides, and all of them were killed. It was simply horrible for him to think of such killing, and therefore he was thinking of residing in hell for millions and billions of years. Text 50. There is no sin for a king who kills for the right cause, who is engaged in maintaining his citizens. But this injunction is not applicable to me. Purport. Maharaj Yudhishthira thought that although he had not actually been involved in the administration of the kingdom, which was being carried on well by Duryodhana without harm to the citizens, he had caused the killing of so many living beings only for his personal gain of the kingdom from the hands of Duryodhana. The killing was committed not in the course of administration, but for the sake of self-aggrandizement, and as such, he thought himself responsible for all the sins. Text 51. I have killed many friends of women, and I have thus caused enmity to such an extent that it is not possible to undo it by material welfare work. Purport. The Grihamedis are those whose only business is to perform welfare work for the sake of material prosperity. Such material prosperity is sometimes hampered by sinful activities, for the materialist is sure to commit sins, even unintentionally, in the course of discharging material duties. To get relief from such sinful reactions, the Vedas prescribe several kinds of sacrifices. It is said in the Vedas that by performing the Ashwamedha Yajna, horse sacrifice, one can get relief from even Brahmahatya, killing of a Brahmana. Maharaj Yudhishthira performed this Ashwamedha Yajna, but he thinks that even by performing such yajnas, it is not possible to get relief from the great sins he committed by killing the friends and relatives of innocent women. In a war, either a woman's husband or brother or even father or sons go to fight, and when they are killed, a fresh enmity is created, and thus a chain of actions and reactions increases, which is not possible to be counteracted even by thousands of Ashwamedha Yajnas. The way of work, karma, is like that. It creates one action and another reaction simultaneously, and thus increases the chain of material activities, binding the performer in material bondage. In the Bhagavad Gita 9:27 and 28, the remedy is suggested that such actions and reactions of the path of work can be checked only when work is done on behalf of the Supreme Lord. The battle of Kurukshetra was actually fought by the will of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, as it is evident from his version, and only by his will was Yudhishthira placed on the throne of Hastinapur. Therefore, factually, no sin whatsoever touched the Pandavas, who were only the order carriers of the Lord. For others, who declare war out of personal interest, the whole responsibility lies on them. Text 52. As it is not possible to filter muddy water through mud, or purify a wine-stained pot with wine, it is not possible to counteract the killing of men by sacrificing animals. Purport. Ashwamedha yagyas, or Gomeda yagyas, sacrifices in which a horse or a bull is sacrificed, were not, of course, for the purpose of killing the animals. Lord Chaitanya said that such animals sacrificed on the altar of yajna were rejuvenated, and a new life was given to them. It was just to prove the efficacy of the hymns of the Vedas. By recitation of the hymns of the Vedas in the proper way, certainly the performer gets relief from the reactions of sins. But in case of such sacrifices improperly done, under inexpert management, surely one has to become responsible for animal sacrifice. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, there is no possibility of performing the yajnas perfectly, for want of expert brahmanas who are able to conduct such yajnas. Maharaj Yudhishthira therefore gives a hint to performing sacrifices in the age of Kali. In the Kali Yuga, the only sacrifice recommended is the performance of the Harinam Yajna, inaugurated by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But one should not indulge in animal killing and counteract it by performing the Harinam Yajna. Those who are devotees of the Lord never kill an animal for self-interest, and as the Lord ordered Arjuna, they do not refrain from performing the duty of a Kshatriya. The whole purpose, therefore, is served when everything is done for the will of the Lord. This is possible only for the devotees. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the first canto, 8th chapter of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, entitled Prayers by Queen Kuntī and Parīkṣit saved. Jai, all glories to the eternal pastimes of Lord Krishna. All glories to Queen Kuntī, the aunt of Krishna. All glories to Maharaj Yudhishthira, the newly crowned king, and all glories to Bhismatev for his instructions, which convinced Maharaj Yudhishthira to sit on the throne. Hare Krishna. All right. Moving along. Chapter 9. The passing away of Bhismatev in the presence of Lord Krishna. Text 1. Sutta Goswami said, being afraid because of having killed so many subjects on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Maharaj Yudhishthira went to the scene of the massacre. There, Bhismadev was lying on a bed of arrows, about to pass away. Purport. In this 9th chapter, it is willed by Lord Sri Krishna. In this 9th chapter, as it is willed by Lord Sri Krishna, Bhismadev will impart instructions to King Yudhishthira on the subject of occupational duties. Bhismadev will also offer his last prayer to the Lord on the verge of passing away from this mortal world, and thus become liberated from the bondage of further material engagements. Bhismadev was endowed with the power of leaving his material body at will, and his lying down on the bed of arrows was his own choice. Thus this passing away of the great warrior attracted the attention of all the contemporary elites, and all of them assembled there to show their feelings of love, respect, and affection for the great soul. Text 2. At that time, all his brothers followed him on beautiful chariots, drawn by first-class horses decorated with gold ornaments. With them were Vyas and Rishis like Domya, the learned priests of the Pandavas, and others. Purport. For a description of Domya, see the purport to texts 6 and 7 of this chapter. Text 3. O sage amongst the Brahmanas, Shonaka, Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, also followed, seated on a chariot with Arjuna. Thus, King Yudhishthir appeared very aristocratic, like Kuvera, surrounded by his companions, the Guyakas. Purport. Lord Sri Krishna wanted the Pandavas to be present before Bhismatev in the most aristocratic order, so that he might be pleased to see them happy at the time of his death. Kuvera is the richest of all the demigods, and that herein it is said, Kuvera is the richest of all the demigods, and that herein it is said, Lord King Yudhishthir appeared like him. Oh, I see. I'll read that again. It wasn't clear. Kuvera is the richest of all the demigods, and that herein it is said King Yudhishthir appeared like him, indicates that the procession, along with Sri Krishna, was quite appropriate to the royalty of King Yudhishthir. Text 4. Seeing him, Bhishma, lying on the ground, like a demigod fallen from the sky, the Pandava king Yudhishthir, along with his younger brothers and Lord Krishna, bowed down before him. Purport. Lord Krishna was also a younger cousin of Maharaj Yudhishthir, as well as the intimate friend of Arjuna. But all the family members of the Pandavas knew Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord, although conscious of his supreme position, always behaved according to human customs, and so he also bowed down before the dying Bhismadev, as if he were one of the younger brothers of King Yudhishthir. Text 5. Just to see the chief of the descendants of King Bharat, Bhishma, all the great souls of the universe, namely the rishis among the demigods, brahmanas and kings, all situated in the quality of goodness, were assembled there. Purport. The rishis are those who have attained perfection by spiritual achievements. Such spiritual achievements can be earned by all, whether one is a king or a mendicant. Bhismadev himself was also one of the Brahmarshis and the chief of the descendants of King Bharat. All rishis are situated in the quality of goodness. All of them assembled there on hearing the news of the great warrior's impending death. Texts 6 and 7. All the sages, like Parvata Muni, Narada, Domya, Vyas, the incarnation of God, Brihadashva, Bharadwaj, Parashuram, with disciples, Vasishta, Indrapramada, Trita, Gritsamada, Asita, Kakshivan, Gautama, Atri, Kaushika, and Sudarshana were present. Purport. Parvata Muni is considered to be one of the oldest sages. He is almost always a constant companion of Narada Muni. There are also spacemen. They are also spacemen, competent to travel in the air without the help of any material vehicle. Parvata Muni is also a Devarshi, or a great sage amongst the demigods, like Narada. He was present along with Narada at the sacrificial ceremony of Maharaj Janamejaya, son of Maharaj Parīkṣit. In this sacrifice, all the snakes of the world were to be killed. Parvata Muni and Narada Muni are called Gandharvas also because they can travel in the air singing the glories of the Lord. Since they can travel in the air, they observed Draupadi's Swayamvara ceremony, selecting of her own husband from the air. Like Narada Muni, Parvata Muni also used to visit the royal assembly in the heaven of King Indra. As a Gandharva, sometimes he visited the royal assembly of Kubera, one of the important demigods. Both Narada and Parvata were once in trouble with the daughter of Maharaj Srinjaya. Maharaj Srinjaya got the benediction of a son by Parvata Muni. Narada Muni is inevitably associated with the narrations of the Purāṇas. He is described in the Bhāgavatam. In his previous life, he was the son of a maidservant, but by good association with pure devotees, he became enlightened in devotional service, and in the next life, he became a perfect man, comparable with himself only. In the Mahabharata, his name is mentioned in many places. He is the principal Devarshi, or the chief sage amongst the demigods. He is the son and disciple of Brahmaji, and from him the disciplic succession in the line of Brahma has been spread. He initiated Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj, and many other celebrated devotees of the Lord. He initiated even Vyasadeva, the author of the Vedic literatures, and from Vyasadeva, Madhvacharya was initiated, and thus the Madhva Sampradaya, in which Gaudiya Sampradaya is also included, has spread all over the universe. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu belonged to this Madhva Sampradaya. Therefore, Brahmaji, Narada, Vyas, down to Madhva, Chaitanya, and the Goswamis, all belong to the same line of disciplic succession. Naradaji had instructed many kings from time immemorial. In the Bhagavatam we can see that he instructed Prahlad Maharaj while he was in the womb of his mother, and he instructed Vasudeva, father of Krishna, as well as Maharaj Yudhishthir. Domya, a great sage who practiced severe penances at Utkochaka Tirtha, and was appointed royal priest of the Pandava kings. He acted as the priest in many religious functions of the Pandavas, Sanskara, and also each of the Pandavas was attended by him at the betrothal of Draupadi. He was present even during the exile of the Pandavas and used to advise them in circumstances when they were perplexed. He instructed them how to live incognito for 1 year, and his instructions were strictly followed by the Pandavas during that time. His name is mentioned also when the general funeral ceremony was performed after the battle of Kurukshetra. In the Anushasana Parva of Mahabharata 127, 15, and 16, he gave religious instructions very elaborately to Maharaj Yudhishthir. He was actually the right type of priest for a householder, since he could guide the Pandavas on the right path of religion. A priest is meant for guiding the householder progressively on the right path of the ashram dharma, or the occupational duty of a particular caste. There is practically no difference between the family priest and the spiritual master. The sages, saints, and brahmanas were especially meant for such functions. By Badarayana, Vyasadeva. He is known as Krishna, Krishna Dvaipayana, Satyavati Sutta, Parasharya, Parasharatmaja, Badarayana, Vedavyas, etc. He was the son of Mahamuni Parashara from the womb of Satyavati, prior to her betrothal with Maharaj Shantanu, the father of the great general, grandfather Bhishma. He was a powerful incarnation of Narayana, and he broadcasts the Vedic wisdom to the world. As such, Vyasadeva is offered respects before one chants the Vedic literature, especially the Purāṇas. Shukadeva Goswami was his son, and rishis like Vaishampayana were his disciples for different branches of the Vedas. He is the author of the great epic Mahabharata and the great transcendental literature Bhāgavatam. The Brahma Sutras, the Vedanta Sutras, or Badarayana Sutras were compiled by him. Amongst sages, he is the most respected author by dint of severe penances. When he wanted to record the great epic Mahabharata for the welfare of all people in the age of Kali, he was feeling the necessity of a powerful writer who could take up his dictation. By the order of Brahmaji, Sri Ganeshji took up the charge of noting down the dictation on the condition that Vyasadeva would not stop dictation for a moment. The Mahabharata was thus compiled by the joint endeavor of Vyas and Ganesh. By the order of his mother, Satyavati, who was later married to Maharaj Shantanu, and by the request of Bhismatev, the eldest son of Maharaj Shantanu, by his first wife, the Ganges, he begot 3 brilliant sons, whose names are Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidura. The Mahabharata was compiled by Vyasadeva after the battle of Kurukshetra and after the death of all the heroes of the Mahabharata. It was first spoken in the royal assembly of Maharaj Janamechaya, the son of Maharaj Parīkṣit. Brihadashva, an ancient sage who used to meet Maharaj Yudhishthira now and then. First of all, he met Maharaj Yudhishthira at Kamyavan. This sage narrated the history of Maharaj Nala. There is another Brihadashva, who was the son of the Ikshvaku dynasty, Mahabharata Vanaparva 209, 4, and 5. Bharadwaj. He is one of the 7 great rishis and was present at the time of the birth ceremony of Arjuna. The powerful rishi sometimes undertook severe penances on the shore of the Ganges. In his ashram is still celebrated at Prayagdam. It is learned that this rishi, while taking bath in the Ganges, happened to meet Gritachi, one of the beautiful society girls of heaven, and thus he discharged semen, which was kept and preserved in an earthen pot, and from which Drona was born. So Dronacharya is the son of Bharadwaj Muni. Others say that Bharadwaj was the father of Drona. Others say that Bharadwaj, the father of Drona, is a different person from Maharshi Bharadwaj. He was a great devotee of Brahma. Once he approached Dronacharya and requested him to stop the battle of Kurukshetra. And that brings us to 7:45, and I am reaching my quota of sitting in a chair. So I will stop here and we'll finish this purport tomorrow. Hare Krishna. So we ask the assembled sages in their normal, kind way to please comment on any points that were heard tonight, and their reflections will be greatly appreciated. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
First is from Daitari Hari.
Haribol Daitari Hari.
He says, Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances.
Jai, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Srila Prabhupada. And Bhakta Jason.
Bhakta Jason, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances.
Jai, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
And from Gopakanya Devi Dasi.
Haribol Gopakanya Devi Dasi.
Hare Krishna, dear Maharaj, and all assembled sages, all glories to Srila Prabhupada and your daily reading service, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
And Sudevi Dasi.
Hare Krishna, Sudevi Dasi.
She says, Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances.
Jai, all glories to Prabhupada.
Rati Manjari says, Jai Guru Maharaj.
Haribol Rati, Hare Krishna, thank you.
And a question from Bhakta Jason.
Bhakta Jason,
Maharaj, may I please ask, what is a preceptor?
Preceptor is a teacher, and more specifically, a member of the disciplic succession. Hare Krishna.
And from Bhakta Oliver in Wales.
Jai, Bhakta Oliver, Haribol.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Jai, all glories to His divine grace. Hare Krishna.
Thank you again for the daily readings. In purport to 847, Prabhupada explains that Yudhishthira was put into delusion due to family affection by the will of the Lord, similar to Arjuna. Was this by the external or internal energy?
By the internal energy.
My understanding was that for Arjuna it was the external because it was a lesson for the conditioned souls to show the process of surrender, though I may be mistaken.
Only the internal energy can give that level of instruction for the whole world through the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna's pastimes are conducted by his internal energy. So any of these activities that we're hearing about are the pastimes of the Lord. Therefore, they are conducted by the internal energy. And therefore, as we read every morning before we, and every evening before we start the reading, the Bhagavatam is actually a literary incarnation of God. It's not different than Krishna. So there's nothing in the Bhagavatam that is not spiritual, that is not internal energy. And even if there is sometimes an example, it is to show how we can go forward in devotional service. Or another way of saying it is what we shouldn't do in order to go forward in devotional service. Everything in the Bhagavatam is connected like that to the instructions of how to come to Krishna. Back to Godhead. Hare Krishna.
He says, thank you.
Hare Krishna, thank you. I guess the assembled sages are a little bit sensitive. You're all so kind and considerate. I need to get off the chair, and you picked up on my comment. I probably shouldn't have made it. Excuse me. But I appreciate so much your sensitivity. And we'll stop a little early tonight and give me a chance to get off my chair. Thank you so much. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai. Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. And tomorrow, see you. Same time, same place, same topic as the unfolding of the prelude to the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam continues with the passing away of Bhismatev. Hare Krishna.